Hello everyone. So in this video tutorial, we are going to work on the previous project that we did of an apple walking. We're going to use that as a base, but we're going to change things a little. So to make this walking animation a bit more realistic, we're going to, instead of having the apple walk across the screen, we're going to give the illusion that the apple is walking by making the background move. And for this project, since the apple is walking sideways, we're going to make the background move sideways as well, horizontally. Okay, so this is a video tutorial for how to do horizontal moving backgrounds. Okay, side to side moving. Alright, first things first, let's check our animation for the apple. Okay, so this is what we coded last week. We set a size of our apple to be 200. Forever, it's going to wait some time before it changes to the next walking costume. So that was what we did last video. Okay, and then I made it move 10 steps. So it should look something like this. Okay, but this is not what we want today. Today we're going to make the background move instead of the apple. Okay, so for that, what I'm going to do is, first, I'm going to remove the move step block from my code. Okay, so the apple will just move on the same spot. And I am going to set its original position back to this starting point. Let's make it about 0, 0. Okay, so when green flag is clicked, set the size to 200, go to x equals 0, y equals 0, and this will be right in the center. Okay, alright, so now we're going to add a backdrop that moves. Okay, but something tricky here is we are not exactly going to add a backdrop as a backdrop. We're going to add a backdrop as a sprite. Okay, because backdrops can't actually move. I will show you why this is impossible. Okay, so let me just click onto the backdrop tab. We're going to add a new backdrop from the Scratch Sprite library. Okay, I am going to choose, let's choose a simple blue sky. Okay, alright, my apple is at the wrong position, so I'm going to reposition my apple sprite. Okay, let's get a rough estimation. Okay, if I want it to be this way, it would be at least about y equals to minus 90. Okay, so I'm just going to change my y value to minus 90. Okay, so when I play my animation, it should look something like this. So the apple moves on the spot at the bottom. Okay, now I'm going to stop this. Okay, now everyone, just as I was saying just now, if you click onto your backdrop, okay, you will notice that sadly, you will not be able to code any motion for the backdrop. Okay, backdrops can't be moved. So how do we exactly create an illusion of a horizontally moving backdrop? Well, we'll have to change our backdrop into a sprite. Okay, so how to do that? First things first, I'm going to click onto my backdrop costume editor. Okay, I am going to move this picture out and put it into an empty sprite. Okay, so what I'm going to do first, I'm going to just add empty sprite. Okay, I'm going to call this sprite backdrop. Okay, so this is the real backdrop. I'm going to go back to my stage backdrop. Okay, using the panels on the left side, just click and drag the image over. Okay, hover over the backdrop sprite until it shakes, then drop it there. Okay, so automatically when you click onto your backdrop sprite, you will have the image of your stage backdrop there. Okay, so with that, let's go back to stage. We're going to remove this backdrop. We don't need this anymore. Okay, just leave it at the blank screen. Alright, so our stage backdrop is actually the blank screen. The backdrop we want to control to move is the one as a sprite. Okay, so let's go back to this sprite backdrop. Okay, I'm going to exit from the costume editor, so go back to code. Okay, now first things first, we want to make sure that this backdrop sprite is always behind our actual walking sprite. Okay, so for this, we're going to do a simple code. Okay, I'm going to use my green flag as a control. So when green flag is clicked, I want my sprite backdrop to go to the back layer. So I'm going to go to looks. Okay, if you scroll down a bit, you will be able to see this button that says go to front layer and go forward how many layers. Okay, I'm going to use the second one. Okay, but I'm going to change the forward to backward. So I'm going to make my backdrop sprite go backward by, I'm going to give a huge number of layers to pretend that it's all the way at the back. So let's say about 10 layers. Okay, so with that, when I activate this code, automatically my backdrop sprite will be sent to the back. Okay, now everyone, you notice that the backdrop sprite is not really centralized, so you can just pull it and drag it to control the sizing and position on your screen here. Okay, don't worry if it's overlapping the previous sprite, just click the code again. Okay, now everyone, you'll notice that when you import your backdrop image as a sprite, there will be some white gaps along the edges. So we don't want that. What you can do is actually go to your costumes. Okay, click onto your backdrop sprite. Okay, currently now it's all in pieces and I don't want that. I want it as a full image. So I'm going to convert it to a bitmap image. And then I'm going to convert it back to a vector. Okay, so when I click on this, it will appear as one full image now. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to just use the blue dots and stretch, okay, stretch the image all the way across the entire screen until I can't see the white marks anymore. Okay, just do a rough one. The more important thing in this tutorial is basically the coding. All right, so if you are particular about the sizing and the white gaps, then you may want to do this. If not, you can move on to the coding first. Okay, so let's say I'm done with the resizing. I'm going to go back to code. Okay, now this is the fun part. First things first, we are going to create variables for the X and Y position for our backdrop sprite. So let's go to the tab variables. We're going to create a variable called X position. I'm going to call it XPOS for short. I'm going to name this as position 1. I will explain very soon. Okay? Okay. So X position 1, you'll notice that this variable suddenly appears at the top. I don't want this to happen because this is a bit distracting. So what I can do is just to untick the box at the left panel here. Okay, so I created the X position 1 variable. Let's make another one for Y position 1. Okay, the reason why I'm going to make these two variables is so that I can change the X and Y position of my backdrop on my own. Okay, now let's get started with the coding. First things first, we want our backdrop to start in the center of the screen like that. So I'm going to use this set block. Set my variable, what variable? Let's set the X first. X position to 0. I'm going to pull out another one. Set Y position to 0. Okay, so this will make my backdrop stay in the middle. Okay, but remember, these two are variables. The Scratch program does not know that this is X and this is Y. So we have to make the Scratch program understand that this is X and this is Y. How to do that? Go to Motion. Okay, look for a go to block. Okay, put it under the initial variable sets. Okay, now go to X equals to, I'm going to make this Scratch X my X variable, which is X position 1. I'm going to make this Y, okay, value as my Y position. Okay, so now Scratch will understand that its X and Y positions are my X and Y positions. Okay, now let's continue. Now this is the moving part. Control forever. Okay, forever, I want my backdrop to change. Okay, change what position? If you notice, our apple is going to walk to the right. Okay, so with that, my backdrop is going to move to the left to create the illusion that the apple is walking. So for your backdrop to move to the left, we are going to change, all right, the X position of my backdrop by minus. Okay, let's do about minus 10 first. Minus 10 would mean go to the left. Okay, so after changing to minus 10, we need to make sure that our Scratch program understands that the backdrop will move. Okay, so changing the X position here doesn't move the backdrop. We have to make sure it goes to that position. So I'm going to duplicate this go to block, put it under the change block. Okay, so once my X position is changed, it will go to that position, the new one. Okay, now let's set a condition. Okay, when my backdrop changes, okay, if I play this, what's going to happen is that it will move to the left successfully, but it will get stuck at some random value, and I don't know what value it is. Okay, so remember we have learned that the end point of your left position is actually minus 480 for X. So I'm going to make this go all the way to minus 480 before it restarts. Okay, so how I do this, I'm going to add a condition. control. Now, if I'm going to add an operator, okay, this is going to be a math equation. I'm going to pull out the less than sign. If my X position, okay, moves all the way to the left, if it's less than minus 480, which is the boundary here, what's going to happen is I'm going to reset my entire X value to start back at 0. Okay, so for this to happen, all right, I'm going to set my X position back to not 0. This, since it goes all the way to minus 480, for it to join back at the back, it will have to start at 480 again. Okay, let's watch this. Alright, so great. We got a successfully moving animation. Okay, now everyone, you notice that there's a big gap here. Alright, this is what we're going to do. We're going to create a duplicate of this backdrop sprite, but we're going to make it fill in the gap. So what I'm going to do is right-click my backdrop sprite, duplicate this. Okay, now it's backdrop 2 that we're working on. Okay, backdrop 2 will not have any changes. It will move the same way as backdrop 1, and we don't want that. So for backdrop 2, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to change all my X and Y 1 values to 2. Okay, we're going to differentiate. So I'm going to make a new variable, X position 2, okay, for backdrop 2, and another one for Y. Y position 2 for my second backdrop. Okay, so very easy for this backdrop 2. I'm just going to change all these X position 1, Y position 1 to the 2s. Okay, so do this slowly. Change the first one to X position 2. Change your Y position 1 to Y position 2. Okay, go to, all these must change also. Go to X position 2. Y equals to Y position 2. Okay, I'm basically substituting all the values with the second position. Okay, the 2. Go to X position 2. Y position 2. Alright, if X position 2 is less than 480, then set X position 2 to 480. Okay? It will look something like this. Basically, no change. Why? Because the coding is exactly the same. So how do we ensure that the second backdrop follows after the first? Basically, what we need to do is to make sure that initially our second backdrop, the X position 2, doesn't start at 0. It should start right at the end, which is the other side, which is 480. So when you do this, and when you press play, there you go. You will have a successful moving backdrop. Okay? Alright, some of you might notice this is basically the end of coding, but if some of you are a bit more careful about your placement of objects, you will notice that your backdrops don't align very neatly. Okay, so don't worry about this. Let's stop the project first. What you can do here is to go back to your costume editor, okay, and change the position of your backdrop. So let's see which is the backdrop causing the gap. I'm just going to click on the sprite. Okay, my first one seems fine. My second one has a bit of a big space. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just click onto the costume here. I'm just going to use my left and right arrows. Okay, just to make sure that it's properly aligned. Okay, there will be a bit of cutoff, so don't worry about that if you're not too particular. Okay, play your animation through, check. Still a bit of a gap. Okay, so let's edit our second backdrop now. Okay, just to fill up the space, and there you go. Okay, oops. Again, if you see more gaps, probably means that you have to stretch your backdrop out a bit. So you can just edit using your costume editor, stretch your backdrops out a bit. Okay, after a while, you shouldn't be able to see any more gaps. If you still do, just make sure that all your backdrops have been equally stretched out. Okay, now the gap is less. Alright, so you will have to try and error a lot for this just to get the position correct. If not, the safest would be to choose a backdrop that doesn't have funny edges like that. So basically, it's just one straight line. Okay, so you can minimize the gap. Alright, so that's it, how to code your moving horizontal backdrop. Okay.